Get ready, Staten Island.
The Ferry Hawks are back at SIUH Community Park July 7th to the 12th for a 6-game series against the High Point Rockers. Tonight, first pitch is at 6:30. It's Thirsty Thursday with $5 Bud and Bud Light drafts. Friday, July 10th, first pitch is at 7 p.m. May the Force be with you on Star Wars Night with post-game kids glow around the bases with special lightsaber training packs.
Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.
This is going to be an extremely busy month. I have to watch 104 soccer games, follow the pregame, the postgame, yell useless opinions at the TV. It's a lot. So I knew that when it comes to screening for colon cancer, the choice was clear. The Cologuard Plus test. It can be used at home and can only take 15 minutes, so I can do it during halftime and not miss any action. If you are 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a prescription at Cologuard.com.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Stone Zone in the Roger Stone Show. This was a tumultuous week when Mayor Zohran Mandami released what his office called a list of New York City's ethnic neighborhoods, and missing from that list was Little Italy. Almost immediately, the Italian-American Civil Rights League jumped into action, putting out a strong statement, calling on the mayor to apologize and to restate the list. Almost simultaneously, I got a text from my very good friend, Robert Davi. Robert Davi, of course, is the award-winning prolific actor, screenwriter, director, producer, jazz vocalist, who, by the way, just had a triumphant tour of Foxwoods and their main room there, playing two nights there. By the way, Robert, I had cousins in the room. They said that your performance was extraordinary. And he immediately texted me because he is among those who is outraged by this action by the mayor. That got picked up in the New York Post, a terrific article. Die Hard actor Robert Davi, of course, appeared with Bruce Willis in Die Hard, unleashed on the mayor. I wanted to get him on the show and let him speak for himself. Robert Davi, welcome back into the Stone Zone.
Well, thank you, Roger, and bless you, man, and the Italian civil, the work you do there with that organization. It makes a difference, and you have to wake the people up because kids have not been educated. And what I had said in that article, when my grandparents, and I'm sure yours did, came from Naples and Sicily, my people came from at the turn of the 19th century. The Italian Americans came into this country and we were taught, speak the English, this is America. Work hard, you can do something. My grandfather, my father, he enlisted in World War I. He was critically wounded 3 times, got an oak leaf cluster and 3 Purple Hearts, went back into theater in the U.S. infantry. He worked on those buildings, as many of my uncles did, high-rises where Italian Americans and Irish and Jews and Germans and Dutch fell down from those towers, building. There were less than 100 Muslims in New York City at the time. And this is not a rant, as I said initially, against Muslims, against Indians, against any other ethnic sensibility. It's a rant against Mandami's Marxist philosophical upbringing and where he was engendered from. His father, Mohammed Mandami, was a Marxist. He got money from the United States government to come to America, to go to college, to go to Harvard. He got money from the Kennedy Foundation. The father got money for that. He was a Marxist then. He's a Marxist. His mother is a filmmaker who has a Marxist bent. This guy was born in that civilization, God bless him. Let him go to a Marxist country. Give me a Marxist country that's been successful. And Uganda, which is, actually Tanzania, I think, no, it's not Tanzania. There was a where he was born, where Mandami was born, Zohran Mandami. They have one of the lowest rates throughout South Africa, throughout Africa, all of Africa. I think they're rated 148 in terms of people being happy out of 154 or something, or 142 something. I was reading something, but it's terrible that we have a guy here that doesn't understand America, that's been comes into the country and starts to, and it's been happening, as we know. Look, I've played many different characters. I've researched many different things. I played a Palestinian. I played an Orthodox Jew. I've done lots of different things. I have an understanding of what's going on politically with the social democratic families. David Horowitz, one of my first political mentors, comes from a Jewish, communist, Marxist family. He was part of that whole system. He wrote a book called Radical Islam and the American Left years ago, called Unholy Alliance, that people don't know about. People have to understand to see what's going on. And it's nothing against Muslims or anyone like that. It's about a political philosophy that's infected Catholicism, Islam, and everything else that wants to bring in this racial bigotry and communists that split everybody apart. And this guy takes a place like Little Italy, where I think the San Gennaro Festival, which you're involved with sometimes, Roger, and the Italian Civil Rights League, for years, for decades. And to ignore that, now I hear they put it back on the map. But still, there's Irish and Jewish neighborhoods that are not on the map. And I'm all for nice immigrants, everything, but what's going on in New York is disgusting. I feel like running for mayor. I feel like moving back to New York and running for mayor, because I don't think anyone's speaking out strong enough against AOC, against Bernie Sanders, and against him, because there's a seductive aspect to this that went in through education. Mandami's father is teaching at, I believe, Columbia, making $300,000 a year, where in Uganda, when he was a teacher, he was making maybe $15,000 a year. You come to America and you can have opportunity, and he sits there with his little smiley face, that smirky little face that he has, spoon-fed, whatever he's talking about. He believes, I'm sure he believes what he believes. But you cannot ignore the vibrancy of meritocracy and stop separating the people, the rich and poor game, that the Marxists do so well, that's their whole game plan. And yet when they have a country, everyone is in a worse position than they started. And that's what will happen to this great, beautiful city of New York, that our grandparents and great-grandparents and many others helped build those beautiful skyscrapers.
I totally agree with you. The Italian American Civil Rights League named you as one of their Men of the Year only 1 year ago for your outspoken advocacy and your defense of our culture, our history, and the important role that Italian Americans played in making this country great. Mike Crispy, a great friend of ours, was quoted last week when he said, "This was not a clerical error. This was cultural erasure. Little Italy's sacred ground. It's where Italian immigrants came with nothing, worked hard, opened shops, raised families, built churches, fed the city, and helped make New York what it is today." I think that hits it right on the head. This wasn't an oversight, although I did think it was kind of humorous that the mayor, who's one smooth character, kind of like Barack Obama, he's selling hope and change, doesn't really tell you what that is. But he blamed the whole thing on his predecessor. He said, well, the map was really prepared by the previous mayor, Eric Adams. We just released it. So he was immediately passing the buck. I think you're exactly right, but I would urge you not to run for mayor, only because you have to recognize the demographic changes of New York City. New York City today is about 11% Italian American. It is about 4.4% Irish American. It is less than a third Catholic, which is, of course, unthinkable. At the turn of the century, it was overwhelmingly Catholic. So you've had a dramatic change in the makeup of New York City, but they're still not candid about their true agenda. It's free this, free that, free health care. Pretty soon it'll be free food. They're going to nationalize, or in this case, have the cities take over the grocery stores. I saw a great statement by Vicky Palladino, city council member from New York City, who basically says we're in a soft secession under Zohran. In other words, he considers New York to be an independent city-state with its own foreign policy, its own immigration policy, its own economic policy. It doesn't really recognize the authority of the federal government except to the extent that he can extract money or political wins from it. They intend to use the resources and authority of New York City to wage war against the federal government and the rest of the county. This is what the Democratic Socialists are quite open about. That's what they really plan to do. Colluding with the Iranians, as someone we found about yesterday. He actually had people in his administration who were going to meet with the Iranian ambassador. By the way, that's a violation of the Logan Act. You can't have your own foreign policy. It's a capital crime. But of course, he won't get called out on it because he's on the left. One of the questions I have to ask you, Robert, is because you are so outspoken and you're so stalwart and you're so articulate and you've been so consistent. I've read a number of the things you wrote for Breitbart. To what extent has that really hampered your career in terms of juicy roles and your opportunities for employment in today's Hollywood?
Well, first, it has hurt. And I'm going to pick up one thing about David Horowitz, whose families were communists. He was a communist, and then in the 1970s, he understood what they were doing with the socialist, democratic, and the dialectical materialism was manipulating the youth and how dangerous it was. And he wrote a book called Radical Son. I'm sure you know David Horowitz.
Yes, of course.
Radical Son is another book where he showed, and people should understand this. They should be taught in universities, these young kids and these socialist Marxists in New York City should understand what these policies lead to. Yes, I've been hurt politically, career-wise. My agent will call up. They're interested in you this. They want to know your figures and all of that. But in spite of that, I've been doing films. I did season 4 of Tulsa King with Sylvester Stallone. That'll be coming out in October. I did the whole season 4. I play a tough character. His name is Turco, and he's very, very volatile, and it'll be interesting. And then right after that, I did a film that was directed by the man who wrote Green Book, who won 2 Oscars with John Travolta, called That's Amore, where I play Danny Amore, who's a nightclub singer, and Mira Savino plays my daughter, who falls in love with John's character, and Chaz plays John's father. Terrific film. We just finished it, and it's an old-fashioned, really with tons of music. John sings and dances. So that way I've been good, and I've got a film coming out in August called Bad News on the Doorstep, of all, a period piece. But yes, it has hurt in many, many aspects, Roger.
Well, and for people who don't understand, Robert Davi is a Class A celebrity and movie star. He's appeared with Marlon Brando, Robert Benigni, Bruce Willis, Clint Eastwood, Christopher Walker, and of course the great Frank Sinatra, the greatest of them all. And it has to be difficult, but he has been incredibly outspoken. It's why the Italian American Civil Rights League named him as one of the men of the year. By the way, if you're interested in joining Robert and I, we're both members of that organization, you go to IACRL.org, IACRL.org, Italian American Civil Rights League.org. It is a totally voluntary nonprofit. There's nobody making $1 off of this. Everybody contributes their time. And if Mandami intends to try to remove the statue of Christopher Columbus, which I would almost bet anything he's going to try to do, we will be in court the very next day. The next day.
Thank God. And that's happening all over the country. That's happened in Syracuse. I helped them in Syracuse. There's a thing that's been there since 1923 or even prior, that the again, and I don't understand how these Marxists get into and I'm all for indigenous people. Have Indigenous Peoples Day another day, not Columbus Day. Columbus never had a slave. Do you understand that, kids? He never had a slave. Columbus didn't have a slave, and he didn't start war with the Indians. It came afterwards. Columbus had nothing to do with that aspect. As a matter of fact, he was on a boat back to Spain and being kind of reprimanded because he wasn't that way. So people don't know the true history of Columbus. They know this dialectical materialism that these guys throw off. And Noam Chomsky, you know, you've got the, what's his things, linguistics. And this is what happens. This is what Mandami's father's a genius at. The mother is a genius at that because of the filmmaking and being able to infect it. So this kid comes here when he's 7 years old, bathed in that like Frank Marshall did to, from what I understand, Obama had the same kind of upbringing. And when Michelle Obama came, remember, this is the first time I'm proud of America. Well, come on. The Italians were called lower and dirtier than the Negro in 1906 by the New York Times. There were more lynchings, but my grandparents, I couldn't get into some waspy golf clubs because I was a greaseball Dago wop. But I didn't give a red rat's ass. I says, this is a thing. I can make my opportunity. They'll change. But yet they put this victimized mentality, and guys that have rent. There are people from other countries that are living off of America, getting welfare, getting Social Security, getting aid, and they're not paying their rent for some of these guys in New York City and other places. And they skip along. And that's another terrible thing, what's happening. The way the entrepreneur, and they want to say, and not slumlords, because I did a film called Mott Haven in the thick of it all, where gentrification was happening. And those buildings that some people were living in were decent, good buildings, well kept, clean, and people weren't paying their fair share.
I love it when Robert Davi gets on a rant. We're going to come back with more of him in just a minute. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Welcome back into the Stone Zone. We're talking to the international multi-dimensional star, Robert Davi, actor, screenwriter, director, producer, and an incredible jazz vocalist. I have little doubt that his forceful remarks regarding Little Italy being not present on the list of ethnic neighborhoods released by the mayor played a major role in the mayor's almost immediate retreat. And of course, then he blamed it all on his predecessor, Mayor Eric Adams. Point of personal privilege, because I cannot resist. As I pointed out earlier, Robert Davi is a movie star of the first rank, and he had the opportunity to appear opposite Frank Sinatra in the telefilm Contract on Cherry Street. Now, I'm fascinated by Old Blue Eyes, the chairman of the board, and in the few minutes we have left, Robert, I have to ask you, what was it like to work with the great man, and what was he like?
It was marvelous. He and I became fast friends. Even Frank Jr., before my shows, Frank Jr. was interviewed on a radio show, and he talked about my relationship with the father and pleased that I was doing the music. Frank was so supportive of me as a young actor. My agent couldn't get me a meeting. I walked up to casting on my own, and I wound up co-starring with Sinatra after I got fired from Fiorello's in New York City in the 70s, unjustly, and then we all had dinner there. Frank heard the story from Harry Guardino. We wound up having dinner there, and someone very New York savvy was with us and came back, left the table we were at Fiorello's. I mean, it was a funny experience, Roger. I'll tell you in person sometime about it. And the guy comes back to the table with an envelope and puts it on in front of me. I go, "What's this?" He goes, "Open it." It was a check. I go, "What is this?" He goes, "That's your severance pay," because I was unjustly fired. But Frank knew I was a forceps baby. He was sensitive. He was aware. And over the years, he would be supportive of me. And the big thing, recently because of that rant with Mandami, a black pastor, Pastor Ben or something on X, I don't know if he's a pastor. I don't know what he is. But he criticized me as being a bigot. And I had to say that Frank Sinatra in the 1946 did a film called The House I Live In, and a song. And that was against anti-Semitism and racial bigotry. As we knew, who grew up at that era, Frank Sinatra was a beacon of fairness. He was no bigot. He taught the Italian community. He understood the struggle the Italian community went, and the closest we had to the black relationship. As Quincy Jones also was very affectionate toward me. So when you say something that goes against their political apparatus, which there's a lot of them that for some reason have become Marxists. They have been, and that's not of people of all color, but they want to label you as a bigot or dead or washed up or whatever, and that's unfortunate. I shouldn't pay attention to that stuff, but it gets me because they don't know. They're uneducated. If you were educated, you couldn't say stuff like that. And this is where I find that most of the people, excuse me, even in Los Angeles, I went back there for a concert. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, and Roger. I went back there for a concert a couple of weeks ago. Sold out. I went into a CVS that I hadn't been in a neighborhood I used to pass. Guards. You had to go through security, get to a certain area. They had gates with alarms on them. Everything had a lock on it. Is this a society we're in? Is this what the Democrat Socialist Society is teaching people? Go in, free grab, as people are walking out of stores with tons of stuff. Is this the kind of dignity they want? And people aren't teaching them better? If I stole anything or I did anything dishonest, my mother and my father would duly punish me and tell me the right thing. Now, some people may not have families like that, but there's a morality that's been missing in this country.
Well, we have to leave it there. I want to thank our guest, Robert Davi, and it's right. Try to get some toothpaste or deodorant and see what happens to you. Many thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone. God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Roger Stone Show. You can hear The Roger Stone Show Sunday afternoons at 3. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
My fellow Americans, if you think you know politics, think again. I'm Michael Cohen, and every week on When You Know, we're pulling back the curtain on power, politics, media, and the people making headlines. On my new WABC radio show, you'll hear conversations from names that you know. People like Jerry Falwell Jr., Anthony Scaramucci, Alan Dershowitz, and many, many more. Maybe, just maybe, we'll even hear from the president. No scripts, no spin, just real conversations with people who were in the room where it happened. And trust me, we've got some very big surprises coming. Look, I've spent years at the center of politics, controversy, and power. I know the players, I know the stories, and now I'm bringing you inside. When You Know, Sundays at 5 p.m. on WABC Radio. And When You Know Unleashed, wherever you get your podcasts. Because with me, you never know who's going to show up.